It began like any other day in the university town of Port Harcourt, but before the sun could rise fully over the streets of Aluu, a nightmare would unfold, one that would shock Nigeria and stain the nation's conscience forever. 4 young students, Lloyd Michael, Tekena Ugonna abuser, and Chidiaka Ringa, would leave home that morning with dreams in their hearts, unaware that within hours, they would be fighting for their lives against a furious mob that believed a story that wasn't true. These young men weren't strangers to anyone. They were sons, brothers, friends, boys with laughter that filled the air and ambitions that stretched far beyond the gates of the University of Port Harcourt. But in a tragic twist of fate, a misunderstanding over a debt, rumors whispered from one ear to another, and the quick spread of suspicion turned them from students into marked men. On that October morning in 2012, they went to retrieve money allegedly owed to one of them. The details of the dispute remain tangled, but what's clear is that before they could explain themselves, the wrong set of eyes had already judged them. Someone shouted, "Thieves!" and in a place where fear of crime ran deep, that word was enough to ignite chaos. If you believe stories like this should never be forgotten, if you think the world should hear about the injustice they suffered, then subscribe and join us as we uncover more truths that matter. Your support helps keep these voices alive. The 4 were chased through the streets, their pleas drowned out by the shouts of an angry crowd. In those moments, no one stopped to ask questions, no one waited for proof. People streamed in from alleys and homes, the mob swelling with each step. Someone struck the first blow. Another followed. The young men fell to the ground, bruised, bleeding, begging for their lives. Phones were raised, recording everything. Instead of calling the police to investigate, the crowd called for fuel and tires. The world would later know these final moments through grainy videos that spread across social media, shocking millions but too late to save them. They were dragged to an open field, their bodies battered, their voices weak. Some onlookers turned away, others jeered. A match was struck. The fire roared to life. And just like that, 4 dreams were extinguished. News of the lynching spread like wildfire. Outrage poured in from around the world. Protests erupted in Port Harcourt and beyond, demanding justice and questioning how an entire community could stand by, or worse, participate in such horror. The Nigerian police came under fire for their slow response, and the village of Aluu became synonymous with vigilante violence. Families of the victims were left not only with unimaginable grief but also with the painful knowledge that the whole world had watched their loved ones die. Each of them spoke about the boys' dreams, careers in engineering, music, and business, dreams now reduced to ashes. It took years before the wheels of justice turned. Trials dragged on, witnesses came forward, and slowly, the truth began to emerge. Many of those involved were arrested, and in 2017, 4 men were sentenced to death for their roles in the killings. But for many Nigerians, justice felt incomplete. The mob had been huge, and not everyone responsible had faced the law. The Aluu 4 tragedy wasn't just a crime, it was a warning. It exposed the dangers of mob mentality, the failure of community policing, and the deadly cost of acting without evidence. It asked every Nigerian, in that moment, would you have spoken up or stayed silent? Today, more than a decade later, the names Lloyd, Tekena, Ugonna, and Chidiaka are still whispered with sorrow. Their story is told in classrooms, debated in courtrooms, and remembered on social media every October. And for many, it is a reminder that justice is not just the job of the police. It is the duty of every citizen to stand for truth, even when it's difficult. If you believe in giving a voice to the silenced, if you want to make sure these boys are remembered not just as victims but as sons of Nigeria whose lives were stolen, subscribe and stand with us. Together, we can keep their story alive and fight for a future where such a tragedy never happens again. Because in the end, the worst thing that can happen after an injustice is for it to be forgotten.